My car looks basically the same. Didn't really change much. I don't know whose fault the wreck was, okay? If you don't know, I never said this when I was a youth pastor because I didn't want people to freak out. I'm not a very good driver, okay? I drive most of the time just well enough to not get in wrecks, okay? And I do a pretty good job of it. But this week in particular, we were trying out, my buddy had a cat, and we were trying to get a new cat, and so we were trying this cat out. Well, this cat didn't like our dog at all. Like, no margin for error. If he saw the dog, he'd freak out. And so we were like, okay, this isn't gonna work out, so I'm gonna take the cat back. And so that's what I had in the car with me, was the cat carrier, okay? And I was taking it back to my friend. And I don't know if I looked down at my phone or the carrier, and when I say look down at my phone, I usually have like a podcast going. I don't usually listen to the radio. So I don't know if I looked down at the phone or glanced at the carrier to see how the cat was doing. I can't remember. I just know that I looked down, and when I looked up, one of those, the truck that was in front of me decided to slow down to like 5 miles an hour to do a right turn. Y'all know the kind of truck I'm talking about. Like, we're on 78, we're going 50 miles an hour, but you're going to slow down to 5 miles an hour to take a right turn. And so my options were slam on the brakes or change lanes. And in my head, I'm like, well, the cat, I don't really want to be like, hey, by the way, I slung your cat into the front of the carrier because I slammed on my brakes. So I decided, I looked in my side mirror real quick, nobody was there. I whipped over. And the reason I say I don't know whose fault it is because I got sideswiped. He hit me on my front driver door, right? And my mirror. So I feel like if I whipped in front of him, he should have hit me from behind, like it would have been but I don't know how exactly he like swerved around and then came back into, I don't know what happened. And when I tried to talk to him, he didn't speak any English, so I have no idea. I say all that to say that I want you to know that your interim pastor is not a very good driver. There's that. But I also want you to know that his heart is so big that he would risk his car for the cat in the passenger seat, okay? And so I just wanted you to know the kind of person you're dealing with and just how big his heart is, okay? All that being said, to kind of branch into things that we don't plan, things that are somewhat out of our control. I don't know how much you could say that was out of my control. But kind of in that same vein, we're going to be starting a new series in Joseph this week, okay? And Joseph, the story of Joseph, I personally love the story of Joseph. I've been wanting to talk about Joseph for probably about a year now. I just didn't know exactly how I was going to work it in. And so if you want to turn to Genesis 37, that's where we're going to be. Genesis 37, that is where the story of Joseph starts. Spoilers, if, I'm going to be going, I'm not going to do the whole story today. We're going to do it in pieces over the next 5 weeks. But if you would like to read ahead, if you've never heard the story of Joseph, if you would like to refresh yourself on the story of Joseph, I would encourage you to read 37 into some chapters in 40, in the low 40s. And that is where the story of Joseph will go on. And it is consecutive. You don't have to find it in different parts of the Bible. It will just spell out the entire story of Joseph for you. And I encourage you to read that to just kind of understand where we're going in this series. But a big thing about the story of Joseph is that it is a story of highest of highs and lowest of lows. But what we're going to focus on this week is the beginning. What kind of starts, what happens to Joseph. And what I want to point out to you, what I want to start with is just this understanding that a lot of the things that happen to Joseph are out of his control. They're not something that he caused or did. And I think that's, for Americans, for us, because we are a rich country, because we have money, we have assets, we have resources, we own things, we do this thing where we kind of fool ourselves into thinking that we actually have a lot of control. A lot of the things that happen in our life are because we cause it, right? When people are successful, they kind of get, they're rubbed the wrong way if you suggest that their success was not because of their hard work. Right? They get upset about this. They're unwilling to sometimes even admit that their success had nothing maybe to do with them or not very much to do with them, but instead a lot to do with circumstance or good fortune, right? And so now this is not a real stat. This is just my humble opinion. But I would argue, I think I could make a really, really powerful argument that at least, at the very minimum, 80% of our lives are completely out of our control. 80% of what happens to us, at the very least, is completely out of our control. I got some examples for you, okay? So for instance, can you guarantee me, and when I say guarantee, when I say promise, when I say assure me, I mean without doubt, you know it's gonna happen, okay? There is nothing that could possibly go against what you say. So when you guarantee me, it's gotta be concrete. Can you guarantee me that you will not have a fender bender on the way home today? Can you assure me that there is no way you will get sick this week? Can you promise me that your savings account will increase by next month, that nothing will ever happen, you won't have to spend any extra money? We can get even more specific, more minute. Can you promise me that you won't get a cavity this week? Can you assure me that you won't miss your alarm in the morning? Can you prove to me, give me irrefutable proof, that you won't forget to pay a bill or to buy something at the store? We can get more heavy, more serious with it, more deep. Can you assure me that you won't trip and injure yourself this week? Can you guarantee me that you'll still be living at the end of the week? Can you guarantee me that you'll still be healthy? That you won't be handicapped in some way? Right? We could go on and on like this for hours about what can you guarantee me, what can you actually guarantee me will be okay or will actually happen within the next hour, the next day, the next few weeks. Right? We could continue doing this. In fact, I thought about waking up one day this week and just writing, starting at the beginning of the day, writing every single thing down that was actually in my control throughout the day, right? That I could guarantee myself from 1 minute to the next. But what I realized is that I'd probably come up with like 1,000 things, and nobody wants to hear me say all of those things. So there are so many things that are just out of our control. We can't do anything about it. Right? And so what we see in the story of Joseph is that in a very similar manner, there are a lot of things out of his control. A lot of things done to him or things that happened to him that were not caused by him. It's nothing that he did that warranted them, but they happened. And what we see in Joseph, what we want to mirror is how he responds to the situation. Because what Joseph, and spoilers, but what Joseph consistently does throughout the story of Joseph is he, I say story, please know that it's real. I'm saying it's a story because we read it as one. But throughout Joseph's account, what we see is that Joseph consistently, no matter what's going on, no matter what happens, no matter whether he's in a peak or he's in a valley, he consistently trusts and has faith and relies on the character of his God. Right? And that never seems to waver. Now, we don't see everything that he goes through or every reaction he had, but the reactions that were given, that we're privy to, he responds in a correct manner in understanding that our God is in control. Because we can kind of realize that, well, if 80% of our lives is out of our control, like, why should I make plans? Why should I have dreams? I have no control over them. But the idea is that we have faith. We can trust in the fact that our God is in control. He made us, he made everything, he created everything. He is in control, and so we can trust and have confidence in who he is and his character. And we can trust that he is going to take care of things and allow things to happen, right? And so, all right, starting in Genesis 37, 1 through 10, this is kind of the beginning of the story, all right? Genesis 37, 1 through 10, it says, Jacob is going to be Joseph's father. Jacob lived in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is the account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending the flocks with his brothers, the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah. So basically what it's saying here, Bilhah and Zilpah are wives of his father Jacob. Joseph is not born of those women. So he's born of a different mother. Okay, he's born of Rachel, his father's wives, and he brought their father a bad report about them. all right? So he's out tending the flock with the other brothers who have a different mother than him, right? Which is going to kind of pop up later in this section of the story. But he's tending the flocks with them, and he brings a bad report about them. We don't know what the report was. We just know that maybe he was kind of a tattletale. I don't know. It says in verse 3, now Israel, that's Jacob, same person, okay? Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. Now, stopping there, I have heard some sermons before that almost like suggest that Joseph was like this cocky, arrogant kid, so he kind of deserved what he got, right? Like, I'm going to respectfully disagree. I don't know that Joseph did anything to warrant his father's affection, okay? His father's favorite wife was Rachel. Rachel's firstborn son was Joseph, okay? So his father loves him specifically for no other reason than the fact that he was the firstborn to Rachel. That's why he loves him so much, okay? This is nothing warranted by Joseph. It almost feels like if you've ever had siblings, or if you've ever been at work and the boss or your parents compliments you in front of everybody else, right? They're like, well, y'all should really see the work so-and-so did, and y'all should do it more like them. It's almost like a compliment that you get, and you're like, man, thanks for the compliment, but I don't really appreciate like the target you just put on my back, because everybody's in the room sitting there going, wow, oh, great. Look who's teacher's favorite, basically. You're like, I didn't really ask for any of that. I didn't really ask for you to compliment me in front of everybody and kind of single me out, but it's already kind of done, so there it is. That's kind of what's going on with Joseph here. His dad loves him. There's no problem with his dad loving him, but he kind of gives him an ornate robe. He kind of makes it it must have been somewhat obvious. The brothers recognized it. Hey, he loves that guy more than he loves me. Great, right? So for all you fathers out there on Father's Day, maybe don't follow the fathering style of Jacob here, okay? Maybe don't go down this road and decide which one of your children is your favorite and then single them out. Maybe don't do that. But this is what Jacob does, and Joseph just kind of has to deal with the consequences. He's 17. His brothers hate him. They don't like him. They don't like him a lot. They can't even talk nicely about him. If anything, they should be mad at Jacob, right? Jacob's the one that's caused this issue here. Joseph, unfortunately, is the one that's going to bear the consequences. Verse 5, it continues and said, Joseph had a dream. And when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. Awesome. He said to them, listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it. His brothers said to him, do you intend to reign over us? Right? So basically, I had a dream where all of you are going to bow down to me. Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us? And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. Listen, he said, I had another dream, and this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me. Okay? Now, just real quick, the sun and moon is father and mother, and then the 11 stars are the brothers. So everyone's going to bow down to me. Okay? When he told his father, Jacob, as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, what is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. So his father is almost like, he can do no wrong. I'll kind of keep it. The brothers were fed up with it. They can't stand him now. Now, I will admit here, okay? I will concede this about Joseph. If you know that your brothers don't like you very much, because it kind of got to be evident a little bit. You get that feeling from people. If you know these people don't like you, maybe not the wisest decision to share with them a dream in which they're going to bow down to you, right? Maybe not the wisest interpersonal relationship strategy to go about, especially because dreams back then were not dreams like of today, right? We have dreams and we just kind of think nothing of it. God does not tend to communicate, at least in American society, God does not often communicate within dreams with us, right? He just doesn't do that as much anymore, or we don't see evidence of that as much anymore. But back then, it was a prevalent way in which God communicated with his people. He would give them dreams. So basically, like in an underlying tone, what Joseph is telling his brothers is, God told me that one day you're going to bow down to me. That's pretty much kind of what he's getting at here. And then for him to have a second dream, kind of reaffirming the first dream, like he's basically saying, look, I mean, I know y'all don't like me, but one day God's going to make sure that you bow down to me. Maybe not the wisest of decisions. That being said, I mean, Joseph didn't choose to have the dream. And he's 17. Maybe he's rash. Maybe not the wisest just yet. We were all 17 at one point. Maybe we didn't make the best decisions. All right, so I can kind of cut him some slack. Maybe not the wisest decision, but at the end of the day, Joseph didn't ask to have this dream, and he was just sharing what he had dreamt, okay? Now, we're going to skip 9 verses. We're going to go to verse 19. The brothers have had it, okay? They said, here comes that dreamer. So they're talking. They see Joseph in the distance. Here comes that dreamer, they said to each other. Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams. When Reuben heard this is one of the brothers. When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. So Reuben's trying to do the right thing here. He says, let's not take his life, he said. Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him. Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So it sounds like Reuben kind of had this idea that I'm going to come back later and I'm going to kind of pull him out and we'll make sure Joseph makes it safely home. So we have this idea that kind of Reuben leaves. It says, when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, right? The special robe that his dad had given him. The ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. So it's almost like a dried up well. They just kind of threw him in a pit kind of thing. We're assuming that it's deep enough. Joseph can't get himself out, although I guess even if he could, there's 11 brothers waiting to throw you back in. So as they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead. Their camels were loaded with spices, balm, and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Come, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay our hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. So Judah just seems like just a ray of sunshine in their family. So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt. All right. So I think it's real easy. It's real plain to say, when the Bible suggests that these brothers hate Joseph, it means they hated him. It's not a metaphor. They were ready to get rid of him, okay? Back then, I know there's 12 brothers, so Jacob's not necessarily worried about an heir or anything like that, but to have a male heir of any kind was significant and highly valued. For them to say, we're going to get rid of it, is also them being like, we're getting rid of like a whole lineage. Remember in the Old Testament, they have laws about how, like, if my farm fails, one of my family members can redeem that for me. So like Joseph in the future could have been a person to help redeem things for them. They don't care. They don't care about the implications. They have come to the conclusion that there are 2 ways to deal with this person. There are 2 ways to deal with their brothers. Out of all the ways they could have handled this, They found the two best possible solutions in their head. One is to kill him, okay, which I'm imagining Joseph doesn't like that plan, okay? The second best plan they can come up with is to sell him into slavery. All right, at the end of the day, what they've done here is just plain evil and wicked. Like it's not, there's no justifying it. This is the same evil and wickedness that overcame Cain when Cain chooses to kill Abel. It's the same thing here, that they hate Joseph to an extreme extent, and they're ready to get rid of him. And so that's what they do. They sell him at 17 years old into slavery. And you know that they know that it's wrong. We know that they know that it's wrong. Why? Because you can hear Judah talk about the fact in verse 27. You can hear him talk about the fact that, well, let's not lay hands on him. He is our own flesh and blood. Like, we wouldn't want to do something really bad, right? So let's kind of justify it or make it better by just selling him into slavery. Even though that's not what they tell the father. Because what happens is Reuben comes back, realizes Joseph is gone. He kind of has a breakdown, right? He kind of like tears his clothes. He's freaking out. And he's at this point where he's basically like, well, he's not here anymore, so what can I do? And then he kind of just goes along with the rest of their plan, which is to dip Joseph's coat in blood and then go back to Jacob and be like, well, his coat's got blood on it and we didn't find any pieces of him, so he must have been mauled by an animal. And so Jacob just thinks he's dead. Jacob just thinks he's dead and he'll never see him again, right? I want to point out, like I talked about in the beginning, how much of this is maybe the first trial that we see Joseph endure, but it is not going to be the last. And I just want to hark back to this idea that a lot of what just happened is out of Joseph's control. It's not something that he did specifically. He wasn't, I don't know that his attitude was, I'm going to try to make my brothers hate me so much so that today when I wake up, they're going to throw me in a cistern and sell me into slavery. This is not what he had planned. And yet, this is what happens to him, and he just kind of has to deal with it. You've probably heard this before. I can almost guarantee you've heard this before, but life is not fair. And I know that a lot of time there's some sass or some attitude behind that phrase, right? Like a child is saying, well, but that's not fair. And it's like, well, life's not fair, right? Like, but I mean it in like a very compassionate way. Life is not fair. I wish that it was. I wish that everything worked out. I wish that we never had to experience the results or the consequences of other people's evil, of other people's wickedness, sin, and brokenness. I wish we didn't have to experience that. That would be fair. But the fact is life is not fair. And we do experience the consequences of their sin. We are afflicted by their actions. And we will continue to be that way until God chooses to come back and fix our world. Life is unfortunately not fair, and we have two ways that we can respond to this. Number one, which some people do, is we can sit in our anger, our bitterness, our disappointment. We can sit in that, and we can be upset, and we can moan, and we can pout about it. And I don't mean that in like a demeaning way. Sometimes things that happen, they warrant moaning and being upset about them. They warrant grief, right? But the problem is that when we sit in those things, when we allow anger, bitterness, disappointment, frustration to fester about something, what happens is that it takes us over. It slowly starts to kind of consume us, and what happens is we become stagnant. We no longer move forward. We sit, and we see this a lot today in our culture, in our society. It's very prevalent. We sit in our victimhood. And all we can do is focus on the fact that we're a victim. We're never able to move past that. We're never able to grow. We're never able to move on. able to get to the part where God could use it as a blessing possibly, right? And we'll get to that in just a sec. But we're never able to get to that point because we're so stagnant and stuck in our bitterness and how upset we are and our frustration and our disappointment. We're so stuck in that we just become stagnant. And all we ever are is a victim. We never move past it, right? The second thing we can do, the second reaction we can have, though, is what we're going to see, and spoilers again, but what we're going to see in Joseph in the upcoming chapters is that instead of being stagnant and focusing on our victimhood, what we can do instead is understand that what happened to us is unfair, that unfortunately the consequences we're enduring are not necessarily things that we caused. The consequences that we endure throughout life don't always have to be because God is punishing us. They don't always have to be because God is suggesting we didn't have enough faith. It's not him necessarily saying that we deserve it. In fact, he hates sin more than we do. He can't even be around it. He doesn't want it anywhere near him. So he hates it as well. But we can look at that and understand that though we didn't cause it, we can have trust and we can have faith that our God will take care of us through it. Our God is not a God who leaves us in affliction, who leaves us to kind of deal with those consequences, that sin, all by ourselves. Instead, he's a God who recognizes what we're going through, has compassion, has mercy because of what is happening to us, and he takes care of us through it. And by doing that, we move out of that stagnation. We allow ourselves to kind of heal, and we're able to kind of move past what has happened to us because we trust that God will take care of it. This is the same God that we believe in, that when the Israelites were stuck in Egypt and they cried out, he had Moses go get them. Throughout the book of Judges, you see the Israelites get into plenty of trouble. You see that they consistently turn their eyes away from the Lord. And yet, even though they make the same mistake over and over again, God goes and gets them. He sends someone to save them. It's the same God who understood that we're afflicted by sin, that we have no way of saving ourselves. And so he sent his son to die for us on the cross so that our sins may be forgiven and we may have an opportunity at redemption. He didn't leave us stuck in our affliction, but he came and got us, right? Joseph does an amazing job, at least what we see in the story. Joseph does an amazing job of, though he's been afflicted by something, though he has received a consequence that maybe he didn't cause, not by his own doing, he's got these trials in front of him that maybe were unfair, but he has to deal with them. He does a great job of focusing on the second part, which is he focuses on the fact that, yes, this has happened to me, but my God is good and he will take care of me. We don't see his faith, we don't see his trust in God waver. And so, all that to say, I don't know what you're dealing with. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know what trials are in front of you. I don't know what trauma you have. I don't know what trial is in front of you that you're consumed by. I don't know what has caused you maybe to be upset or angry or bitter. I don't know your situation exactly. What I can tell you is that you're not alone in it. It may not be the exact same. In fact, it's really never the exact same. But all of us have our own different things that have caused our own trauma, our own bitterness, our own grief. And what we can have faith and trust in is that our God is in control of these things, and he will not just leave us in that affliction. We talked about last week, the woman is afflicted, and she reaches out to grab his coat, right? She touches it, and her affliction is gone, and he tells her her faith has saved her. Our God is a God that when we call out, when we reach out, when we ask for help, he does not leave us afflicted, but he takes care of us. And we'll continue to see that throughout the next chapters in Joseph. Joseph continues to show or give a great example of what it looks like to deal with the peaks and valleys of our lives, the times in which things happen to us that are out of our control, that we're faced with, that we just have to deal with, and yet we can still have confidence, we can still have faith, we can still have trust, we can still have peace knowing that our God does not leave us alone, but he takes care of us. And so as we move through the story of Joseph, we will be able to see how God still takes care of his children, even when sin and evil afflict them. Let me pray first.